Language is a funny thing. We have our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and we condense them down into a series of words that we try to convey an idea of what's in here and what's in here to other people. A lot of times you hear, oh, well, communication is difficult. They're a bad communicator. And that's because it's tricky. Language is tricky. For as many words as we have, it's still a very imprecise thing when it comes to expressing emotions. Have you ever felt like your words just aren't doing justice to the idea that you have in your head, to the feelings you have in your heart? And if that's ever been the case for you, it's because language is imprecise. But it's the best thing that we have to communicate with other people what's going on. And what I want you to understand about hypnotherapy is when you're working with a hypnotist, we're dealing with the emotions. You might be coming to me for social anxiety, for a phobia of something, a fear of public speaking, even to quit smoking. But these are very emotional things. They're an emotional issue. And that's why you've come to a hypnotist. Usually it's because nothing else has worked and you know that this has to change. That's a very strong emotional response. So, how do we describe that when we're feeling these things that are so intense that it's hard to really convey the impact that it's having on us internally, especially when it comes to an issue that can really disrupt your life, like anxiety? It's not enough to say, oh, well, this is something that's really bad. We can say that, but is that how we really feel? So, as imprecise as our language is, and we convey so many things, how do we really drive that point home when something is super important? How do we express the intense emotional charge that we feel about something when we're experiencing it? Well, that's easy. We swear. Because sometimes it's not enough to just be like, this has to change now. By the time you come to a hypnotist, usually that feeling about anxiety was, this has to change, and this has to change right the fuck now. I want you to take a moment and just notice the difference in those two sentences. Very different emotional charges in those two sentences, even though they are saying the basic same thing. And that's why I encourage my clients to swear, to not treat hypnosis as some sort of clinical, dry, sterile procedure, because it's not. I'm not a doctor. I'm a hypnotist. And what I work with are the emotions. If you didn't have those intense emotions, you wouldn't want things to change. You wouldn't need things to change. You would be indifferent to it. But you're not. And when something is so frustrating to us, when it's impacted our lives in so many different ways that we absolutely have to change it, sometimes there is nothing that conveys that better than a well-placed, well-timed swear word. When you work with a hypnotist, we deal with the emotions. Sure, you're coming to me for anxiety. You're coming to me to quit smoking. You're coming to me for whatever. But the way we make those changes is by addressing the emotional charge surrounding the thing. When you're dealing with anxiety, you're really dealing with the physical sensations that are tied to the emotions that you're experiencing. So when we experience something, it comes into our senses and it gets filtered into our brain. And then our brain generates an emotion to go with that. This makes me happy. This makes me sad. This makes me frightened. This makes me angry. That emotion, in order for our subconscious to communicate back to our conscious mind what's happening, it then generates a feeling. In the case of anxiety, that could be feel your body temperature rising, your breath constricting, your stomach turning into knots, that fight, flight, freeze mechanism activating, making you need to get away. That's the physical sensation, the feeling of the emotion you're experiencing. And when you're experiencing an intense emotion like that, that's activating the fight, flight, freeze mechanism, when you're having a panic attack, you're not saying, oh, well, I do say this is terribly uncomfortable. I should consider leaving now. No. What you're really saying is, I need to get right the fuck out of here right the fuck now. Fuck this. Two very different things. With hypnosis, what we do is we can take away that emotional charge. You still experience these emotions. You will still experience anxiety. We are hardwired to feel it. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a helpful thing that we've evolved to feel. But when it fires off at inappropriate times, and that emotional voltage is way too high, then it becomes a destructive influence in our lives. And by taking away that emotional charge, we can accept what we're experiencing a lot easier. And then we're not having those uncomfortable feelings in the body that go along with it. We will still be uncomfortable in certain situations that we don't like. That impulse is always there. It's evolutionary. We are hardwired to feel it. It's not a bad thing. It only becomes destructive when we are reacting to it in an inappropriate way, or it's firing off in an inappropriate way. But we can teach ourselves with hypnosis that, yes, this is what I'm experiencing, and I can let it go. We get to choose how reactive we are to what we experience. But we need to be in touch, and we need to be honest about what we actually feel. Because, like I said, we are working with the emotions surrounding it, those things that drive us, because that's what creates these habits and these programs in our subconscious mind. Two things: repetition and emotion. And nothing will implant something into our mind like something with a very strong emotional charge. It's kind of like putting your hand on a hot stove. Burn, boom. You're going to think twice about ever doing that again. That's what happens with our anxiety. We experience something, boom, there's an emotional charge. So any situation that seems similar to that, our mind, because it wants to keep us safe, is going to fire off that same response, even if it's inappropriate, even if it's way too much for what we're actually experiencing. And that's a pain in the ass. But we don't have to live like that. We can take control of it, and we get to choose how we react to it. I know I was in that boat where I was agoraphobic. My anxiety had gotten so bad after I had Bell's palsy. I didn't feel like myself. I tried to push it down. I tried to pretend it wasn't there, but it became so hard for me to do the things that I actually enjoyed doing. I would have a panic attack anytime I tried to leave the house, until I found hypnosis. And I was able to ground that charge and take back control of my life. And that's why I became a hypnotist, so I can help you do the same thing. Because after you have a session with me, I don't want you to leave just feeling good. I want you to feel fucking amazing. Don't be afraid to swear. We have that in our vocabulary for a very good reason. Thanks for watching.